Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome back to Chapter 7, Photosynthesis. We are talking about chloroplasts, and we're talking about the organelle responsible for this process called photosynthesis. Remember that we talked about the organelle has chloroplast has two outer membranes. For our purposes, that's not terribly important. What is important to us is the third membrane, which is the inner membrane, the highly folded inner membrane. This highly folded inner membrane is called the thylakoid membrane. The thylakoid membrane is highly folded into these, they look like stacks of pancakes or stacks of nickels, and those are called grana. Granum is singular, so if I have one stack of pancakes, I have granum. If I have many stacks of pancakes, I have several grana. All right, so the thylakoid membrane is folded, and they look like little stacks of nickels or pancakes that we call grana. Oh. So what's the goop inside of a cell called? The goop in the cell is called the cytosol. Remember that we have goop in the mitochondria. What is the mitochondria? What's its goop called? The goop of the mitochondria is called the matrix. We also have goop in a chloroplast, and its goop is called stroma. All right, the liquid, the fluid in the chloroplast is called stroma. That'll be important in a bit. The second stage of photosynthesis, the synthesis part, happens in the stroma. The first part, the photo part, happens in the grana. So here's that picture we saw in the last video. Remember, here's a leaf. I've taken a cross-section of the leaf so I can look at how it's constructed. A couple of things that remember that we see almost all of the chloroplasts in this center section of the leaf referred to as mesophyll. There are no chloroplasts in this top skin, the top epidermis of the leaf. We do see a few little green cells down here on the bottom. These green cells on the bottom are called stoma, or one of them is a stoma. They're called stomata. So these stoma means hole. And if you look, you can see a little hole that kind of look like, puffy little jelly bean lips. All right. They do have chloroplasts in them. These puffy little jelly bean lips are called guard cells. Just like it sounds, they're guards. These guard cells guard that hole, because it is the job of that hole to allow carbon dioxide to come into the leaf and for oxygen to come out of the leaf. Oh wait, you take in oxygen, you release carbon dioxide for cellular respiration. Yeah, that is the process, but we're not doing cellular respiration. We're doing photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is the opposite of cellular respiration. So I take in carbon dioxide and I release oxygen. These stomata things are basically the plant's nostrils. You bring oxygen in through your nostril and you let it out through your nostril. This is the way in and out. This is the way in and out for the oxygen and the carbon dioxide for the plant. These guard cells are the only cells in the epidermis of the leaf that actually have chloroplasts in them. When a plant doesn't have enough water, the first thing that happens is these stomata, these guard cells, deflate. And when they deflate, they close. All right, so they're not puffy jelly bean lips anymore. Now they just close and they seal. And they seal that hole. Well, why would you want to seal the hole? If I can't breathe, I'm going to die. Well, plants aren't nearly as sensitive about that as we are. What it does is, just like as long as you're breathing, every time you breathe out some water. You use that water to clean your sunglasses. You use that water to clean your phone screen, right? That water, every time you breathe out, you are releasing water. So every time you breathe out, you're losing water. And the exact same thing is true for plants. As long as these stomata are open, they are losing water. And we know that plants need a lot of water. We'll show how and why they need a lot of water in a little bit. But just remember, just understand, plants need a lot of water. And as long as their nostrils, as long as their stomata are open, they're losing water. So if a plant has gotten to dangerous stage, I can't lose any more water, they will seal those stomata. Those guard cells will collapse and they'll stop the oxygen and carbon dioxide from going in and out. And then basically it kind of goes to sleep. It kind of goes into, suspended animation, hoping that water will come back. These are the only cells that actually have chloroplasts in them in the epidermis, these stomata. This is a cell. In the mesophyll, we see these green dots. These green dots are the chloroplasts. This is one chloroplast right here. And we said that it's got two outer membranes. We don't really care so much about the two outer membranes. What we really care about is that one inner membrane. That one inner membrane is this thing right here. These stacks of nickels. These stacks of nickels called grana. The grana are made of this stuff called the thylakoid membrane. Please note, the center of the stacks are hollow. How much space can there be in a nickel, and therefore how much space can be in a stack of hollow nickels? The answer is not a lot. Remember how we talked about when you have a narrow space and you pack it full of something it wants out pretty bad? We're going to do that process again. We did that process with the electron transport chain. We packed a narrow space full of hydrogen ions, so much so they wanted to get out. We're going to do that very same thing again, except this time the narrow space is this center area of the thylakoid membrane. This is a photomicrograph. This is a picture of what chloroplasts look like under a microscope. And again, leaf, cross-section of the leaf, a single cell full of chloroplasts, a single chloroplast. The word photosynthesis has two pieces, photo and synthesis. The process of photosynthesis has two steps. The part where I harvest energy from light, the part where I use that energy to make food. The first step is the harvesting energy from light. The two separate steps of photosynthesis, the first part, the photo part, is often referred to as the light reactions. And I need to admit a failing. And this failing is in the number of years. Since I took this class, they have changed the names of these processes because the ones that I learned weren't really terribly accurate. They were called the light reactions and the dark reactions. It makes sense. The light reactions have to have the light shining, right, to be able to harvest light. The dark reactions, then, well, they're not the light reactions, so they're the other one. But if we call the other one the dark reactions, it kind of makes you think that, well, what has to be happening for these reactions to take place? And your answer is, well, it has to be dark then. And that's not true. It does not have to be dark for these second reactions to take place. However, I'm telling you this because that's how I learned it. And so sometimes my brain will default to this thing called the dark reactions. We do still call them the light reactions. And light reactions are the reactions that take place in a plant to harvest energy from light. And obviously, if I'm going to harvest energy from light, what has to be happening? The sun has to be shining. Light splits water molecules into pieces. The oxygen will diffuse away. We're going to take the hydrogens off of the oxygen. We're going to rip their electrons away. We're going to have a buildup of hydrogen ions that are ultimately going to want out. We talked about that. And then we're going to use the energy in the electrons to shove the hydrogens out. We'll go into this more detail in a bit. The light reactions. So the companion to the light reactions, the synthesis part, we now just refer to it by its proper name, which is the Calvin-Benson cycle. Oh, so this is a plant that you will have seen, hopefully you have seen in the lab experiment from last week, or a couple weeks ago. This plant is called Elodea. This is an aquatic plant. It's actually a pretty common plant in aquaria. People will buy these and put them in their aquaria because they grow really easy. They're pretty easy to take care of. Thing to note, however. So, plants take carbon dioxide out of their environment to make sugar. And what is the waste product that they release? The waste product that they release is oxygen. Look really close at this aquatic plant. What do you see on its leaves? You see tiny little bubbles. Those tiny little bubbles we refer to as pearling. Those little pearls are bubbles of pure oxygen. All of those little bubbles are bubbles of pure oxygen. This plant right here is releasing this stuff that we have to breathe.